I know my channel is still small, and maybe no one really notices the effort yet, but I still show up every day. If you see this, maybe hit subscribe. At a party in our own backyard in Greenwich, Connecticut, my wife raised her glass and said, "You're going to be a father." Everyone around us erupted into applause. I stood up slowly, forcing a smile that didn't quite reach my eyes. Because in that exact moment, something inside me didn't feel like joy. It felt like a quiet, creeping dread. Her name is Vivian Aldrich, and mine is Carter Whitfield. We had been married for 4 years, living what most people would call a perfect life. A restored colonial home, a circle of polished friends, dinners that looked like magazine spreads, and conversations that never dipped below polite and curated. From the outside, we were exactly what people admired. Inside, things were more complicated. But no one at that party knew that. Not even, I think, Vivian. She stood there glowing, one hand gently resting on her stomach. Her eyes locked on me, as if she expected me to step forward and wrap her into a perfect cinematic moment. And for a second, I almost did. But something stopped me. A small, quiet detail that had been sitting in the back of my mind for weeks suddenly came rushing forward. The timeline. Let me ask you something. If the person you trusted the most told you something life-changing in front of everyone, would you question it in that moment, or would you go along with it and deal with the truth later? I lifted my glass, nodded, and said, "That's incredible news." The crowd cheered again. Someone popped champagne. Hands clapped my shoulders. Reed Calloway laughed loudly and said, "Finally, Carter. About time you joined the club." I smiled. I shook hands. I hugged people. But I didn't hug her. Not yet, because my mind had already started doing the math. 2 weeks ago, I had been in San Francisco for a work conference. Before that, I had spent almost a month traveling between Boston and Chicago. Vivian and I hadn't had a real moment together in nearly 6 weeks. Not the kind of moment that leads to this. And yet here we were. A celebration. A declaration. A future being announced like it was already written in stone. Vivian stepped closer to me, her voice soft, meant only for me. "Aren't you happy?" she asked. I looked at her. Really looked at her. Her expression wasn't just joy. There was something else there. Something almost searching. Like she was waiting for me to confirm something she wasn't entirely sure of herself. "I am," I said carefully. And in that moment, I realized something even more unsettling. She needed me to be happy. Desperately. The party went on. Music filled the backyard. Laughter spilled over glasses of wine and carefully plated appetizers. But I was no longer present in it. I was observing, watching, and slowly, patterns began to emerge. Ethan Prescott stood a little too close to Vivian. He had always been part of our circle. Successful, charming, the kind of man who never seemed to try, and yet always got exactly what he wanted. He congratulated her quietly, leaning in just enough that it felt familiar. Too familiar. She didn't step back. She didn't create distance. She smiled in a way I hadn't seen directed at me in a long time. A subtle, private smile. And suddenly, the timeline didn't just feel off. It felt impossible to ignore. I excused myself and stepped inside the house. The noise of the party dulled behind me as the door closed. The silence inside was almost deafening. I walked to the kitchen, poured myself a drink, and stared at the reflection in the glass. A man who had just been told he was about to become a father. A man who wasn't sure if he was. Minutes passed, then the door opened behind me. Vivian stepped inside. "I was wondering where you went," she said softly. I didn't turn around immediately. "I needed a moment," I replied. She walked closer. "Carter, say something real," she said. That made me turn. "Real?" I asked. "Yes," she said, her voice tightening. "Not the version you perform for everyone else." I studied her face again. This time, there was no glow. Just tension. Just uncertainty. "Do you want the truth?" I asked. Her eyes flickered. "Yes." So I said it. "The timeline doesn't make sense." The words landed between us like a glass shattering on marble. She didn't speak immediately. She didn't deny it either. Instead, she looked down for a second, and that second told me more than any explanation ever could. "I was going to tell you," she said quietly. "Not you're wrong. Not that's not what you think. I was going to tell you. Everything inside me went still. When? I asked. Her silence stretched just a little too long. Then she said, after tonight, after the announcement, after the applause, after making it real in front of everyone. The weight of that hit harder than anything else. You were going to let me stand there, I said slowly, and believe something that might not even be true. Her eyes filled slightly, but she didn't look away. I didn't know how to tell you, she said. No, I replied, my voice quieter now. You knew exactly how. You just didn't want to. Another silence. Heavy. Unavoidable. And then she said something I didn't expect. I'm not sure who the father is. The room seemed to tilt. Not dramatically. Not explosively. Just enough to make everything feel off balance. That was the midpoint where everything changed. Not just the situation. The entire power dynamic between us. Because suddenly, this wasn't about betrayal in the way I had imagined. It was about uncertainty. About choices. About consequences that neither of us had fully faced yet. Let me ask you something again. If you were in my place, would you walk away right then? Or would you stay and find out how deep this really goes? I set my glass down carefully. When did it happen? I asked. She hesitated. That weekend in Charleston, she said. The one I had skipped because of work. The one where she told me she needed space. And suddenly, every small detail from that weekend came back. The way she had been distant before leaving. The way she avoided my calls. The way she came back, slightly different. More composed. More careful. Ethan, I asked. She didn't answer. But she didn't need to. I nodded slowly. Of course, I said under my breath. It wasn't planned, she said quickly. It never is, I replied. Another silence. But this one felt different. Less like shock. More like clarity. Because now, everything was out in the open. Or at least, enough of it. What do you want to do? She asked. And that question changed everything again. Because for the first time, she wasn't controlling the narrative. She wasn't presenting a finished story. She was asking me to decide how it ends. I took a breath. And for the first time that night, I felt something steady. Not anger. Not sadness. Something else. Control. We're going to finish the party, I said calmly. She blinked. What? We're going to go back out there, I continued, and we're going to act like everything is exactly how you told it is. Carter. And tomorrow, I added, I'm going to get a test. Her expression shifted. Fear. Relief. Both at the same time. And if it's not mine? She asked. I looked at her. Really looked this time. Not at the image she presented, but at the person standing in front of me. Then I said something that even surprised me. Then we deal with the truth, I said. Not revenge. Not drama. Not a scene. Just the truth. We walked back outside together. The party was still alive, still loud, still celebrating a version of our life that didn't exist. Ethan raised his glass toward us. I met his eyes for a second. Just a second. And in that moment, I knew he understood. Not everything, but enough. The applause started again as we stepped back into the light. Vivian smiled. I stood beside her. And for the first time that night, I didn't feel like I was pretending. Because now, I knew exactly what was at stake. Not just a marriage. Not just a child. But the truth of who we were when everything comfortable was stripped away. The next morning came quietly. No music. No applause. Just reality. And as we drove to the clinic, neither of us spoke. Because some conversations don't need words. They just need answers. And sometimes, the most powerful moment isn't the announcement. It's what happens after the applause fades. What's your personal reflection? If you discovered the truth after a moment like this, would you stay and face it, or walk away immediately?